morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment from very high above all the puerile and pedantic forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Monday morning. It's been kind of a whirlwind the last couple of weeks. I've been telling you that we're in the process of putting together a brand new studio for Cowboy State Politics Live. Oh, and by the way, it's pretty much complete. We're going to unveil it on tomorrow's edition of Cowboy State Politics Live, beginning at 8 a.m. And as it relates to that, the live show is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday from 8 to 9. And then once we get our wheels under us, our sea legs, as it were, then we'll probably expand the program to 2 hours. But I'm telling you, the new studio, our new capabilities are so far above anything that you're seeing in the mainstream media or podcasting or really any video podcast. I mean, it really is a step above. The live program is available on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. And if anything else crops up, any other new social media platform, I'll make sure that it's available there. So anyway, tomorrow, 8 a.m. to 9, and you don't want to miss it. And if you are unfortunate enough to miss the live program, you can always listen to a replay that is available at cowboystatepolitics.com under the Live Replay tab. Now, it's not only going to be a big week for Cowboy State Politics Live. I've got a couple of great guests scheduled for the podcast this week. Harriet Hageman is going to join the program, as well as Representative Tom Kelly. And then next week, I'll play an interview with my friend Rebecca Bextel. She's running to be the chairman of the Wyoming Republican Party. So yeah, lots of really great stuff coming on all things Cowboy State Politics, and you definitely don't want to miss any of it. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for an outbuilding or any type of metal structure, really, the two guys you need to talk to are Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. Today's show is also brought to you by the Wyoming Cartridge Company. They are a Sheridan, Wyoming-based ammunition manufacturer that makes a quality product at a fair price. You're going to buy ammunition anyway. You may as well get it from a Wyoming company. Okay, let's get on with today's show. We begin this morning in the cow pie in an article entitled, Wyoming Attorney General Hasn't Prosecuted 16 Complaints Referred by Chuck Gray. This one might sound a little bit familiar to you. And it should, because Cowboy State Politics uncovered this back on March 8th. And I say uncovered, but really, it's not that big of a revelation to those of us that follow politics in the state anyway. Allow me to just read a little bit of Trotsky's piece to you. Ahem, ahem. Public records provided to Cowboy State Daily show that none of the 16 separate election complaints referred to the Wyoming Attorney General's office for prosecution in 2024 by Secretary of State Chuck Gray have resulted in prosecution. According to an election complaint tracker sheet provided as a result of a public records request made by the Cowboy State Politics podcast and provided to Cowboy State Daily, Hill has yet to take prosecutorial action on any of the 16 cases referred to her by the Secretary of State Chuck Gray's office. Gray told the Cow Pie, the Cowboy State Daily, that not only has Hill taken no action on any of the complaints, she's also failed to keep him apprised of the status of any of the cases. Quote, "This has also been deeply troubling," Gray said. Hill confirmed to the Cow Pie that no charges have been filed in any of these cases, but her office is still actively investigating 8 of them, while also recognizing that some of the cases are related to the same topic. And kind of quote. Here's what Trotsky had to say about it.
reached out to Hill, and she said that while that might be true, her office is still actively investigating about half of those cases. The other context that's important to remember is that the amount of complaints has drastically increased during Secretary of State Chuck Gray's administration. Spoke to Kai Schoen, the former elections director for Wyoming, who preceded Gray's administration, and he said they would typically forward about 5 to 6 complaints on average. Gray has really brought a hardline approach to election reform, believing that the state has many vulnerabilities that need to be closed up, despite there being an extremely low amount of fraud documented in the state.
There's just a couple of eensy-weensy little tiny problems with that. First, and probably most importantly, now I'm not saying this hasn't happened. What I am telling you is I haven't found it yet, but I can't find a single instance where Attorney General Bridget Hill has prosecuted any election-related offense during her entire term of office. Keep in mind that those 16 cases that the cow pie mentioned are only from 2024. That doesn't include any other election-related complaint during Bridget Hill's administration. That's not to say that there weren't election-related offenses investigated by other law enforcement agencies. There absolutely have been. The one that always comes to mind is the Cyrus Western Little Bill Novotny Fake Political Action Committee and Misuse of Campaign Funds incident. That one was thoroughly investigated by the Sheridan County Sheriff's Department, and it was determined that there absolutely were crimes committed. Where that one lost all of its steam is the Sheridan County prosecutor, or county attorney, Diana Bennett, claimed that she didn't have jurisdiction to prosecute it. She then forwarded that complaint to the black hole, which is known in popular parlance as the Wyoming Attorney General's office. There it sits to this day with absolutely no action taken on it. The second little issue evident in Trotsky's piece is the following, and I quote, "The 16 complaints forwarded to Hill's office cover a range of allegations, including campaign advertisement violations, campaign finance violations, failure to file campaign finance reports on time, electioneering too close to polling places, improper use of legislative logos on campaign materials, and campaign materials sent out by unregistered political groups." That one is Cyrus Western. Hill said her office decided not to press charges in the other matters for 3 reasons. Now listen very closely. 1. Hill and her staff do not believe there is substantial evidence to meet the burden of proof because the penalty for violations of matters forwarded to my office is a criminal misdemeanor, and they carry a beyond a reasonable doubt burden. The second thing that Hill brings up is the Attorney General's office does not believe the actions complained of rise to the level of a violation of the statutes or were of a nature to warrant prosecution. And finally, that there was not enough evidence to conduct an investigation. End quote. It seems to me that 2 of those are pretty much the same thing. They don't think that there's enough evidence to prosecute. I'll attack that one in just a second, but listen to the only remaining reason that Bridget Hill gives, that the Attorney General's office does not believe the actions complained of rise to the level of a violation of the statutes. Now, maybe you could discount most of the violations forwarded to the AG's office by the Secretary of State to fall into that category. But they are still offenses, and they were examined by the Secretary of State's office. And Chuck Gray, the Secretary of State, is the chief elections officer in the entire state of Wyoming. So if he investigated something and thought it rose to the level to be forwarded to the Attorney General's office, then presumably the case has some merit. So basically what Bridget Hill's office is saying is the violations reported to her are not that big of a deal, and she's not going to prosecute them. That is the long and the short of it. Let's just focus on Cyrus Western for a minute. And by the way, it is absolutely ridiculous that he's now the head of the EPA for this entire region of the country. Somebody in the Trump administration did not do any research into who he is. But that whole mess is another topic for another show entirely. But Cyrus Western's case, the one that is still sitting on Bridget Hill's desk, involved multiple violations of the statute. And the 2 elected officials involved, Cyrus Western and Bill Novotny, thought that what they were doing rose to such a level that they needed to try to cover up their involvement with it. And Sheriff's Deputy Boot Hill of the Sheridan County Sheriff's Department did find enough evidence and that the crime rose to the level of prosecution, at least in the county anyway. In other words, multiple law enforcement personnel in Sheridan County thought that A, there was enough evidence to prosecute, and B, that the actions taken by Cyrus Western and Bill Novotny did rise to the level of prosecution and that they needed to be forwarded to the Attorney General's office. So while maybe, and I'm not saying this is the case, but maybe a lot of those complaints really aren't that big of an infraction of our election code, there's at least one example of where serious crimes were committed and Bridget Hill didn't do anything about it. So the long and the short of it, my friends, is that when Bridget Hill is in an office, nothing related to election fraud or election integrity or anything of the sort is going to get prosecuted. That much is absolutely clear. So Bridget Hill isn't doing her job right now. Why would we want to give her another one? What I'm referring to, of course, is her name being on the list of 3 candidates for the Wyoming Supreme Court. There's a number of problems with her selection. One of the biggest ones, in my opinion at least, is that she has never been a judge. But the most glaring one is that she doesn't do the job that she's in right now. It's almost like it's a scene off of the movie Office Space. If you don't do your job, you get promoted. But that, my friends, appears to be exactly what's happening. It's either that, or we just don't care about the integrity of our elections. And if that's the case, we have far bigger problems than Bridget Hill. Well, that'll do it for today's installment of the program. Make sure that you don't miss any of the great content that's coming out of Cowboy State Politics. It's going to be a big week on the program. So have a good week, and we'll talk again on Wednesday. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics.